For those of you familiar with popular music, a line from an old Grateful Dead song seems to really sum up the past 10 months. What a long, strange trip it's been. Going online in the spring, the campus almost completely shut down during the summer, high flex classes in the fall, one football game with no fans, and now virtual commencement. It's been a year of constant change, and could things get any stranger?
What hasn't changed and what hasn't been strange is all of you. For us as faculty, as college administrators, you've been the constant for us. Working with you at registration, seeing you in class, virtually or face-to-face, talking with you occasionally in the halls from a distance, seeing you continue to grow academically and personally as you face one of the largest challenges that many of us have ever seen, and seeing you beat that challenge. That's why we do what we do. Our joy of our job is seeing you to be successful, and the classes of 2020 have excelled. Graduates from the College of Human Sciences and Education are hardworking, caring, and curious about the world. They will leave here and engage in careers that make a difference in the lives of others, and we couldn't be prouder. Mr. President, it is our pleasure to present the degree candidates from the College of Human Sciences and Education.
Ifra Abdirahman, Bachelor of Science. Emily Anderson, Bachelor of Science. Nicole Armstrong, Master of Education. Allison Bosch, Master of Education. Jennifer Barch, Master of Education. Madison Belgard, Bachelor of Science. John Bell Clement, Master of Education. Adam Byer, Master of Education. Brianna Bienick, Master of Science. Elizabeth Bitson, Master of Education. Danielle Ballman, Master of Education. Paige Bondley, Master of Education. Felicia Borselin, Bachelor of Science. Brett Bracet, Bachelor of Science. Tanya Breckheimer, Master of Education. Brianna Bregel, Master of Education. Caitlin Breidenbach, Bachelor of Science. Kaylin Brummett, Bachelor of Science. Kristen Carew, Bachelor of Science. Sean Carlson, Master of Science. Keaton Cedarstrom, Bachelor of Science. Paul Christensen, Doctor of Education. Sarah Crossingham, Master of Education. Austin Crows, Bachelor of Science. Sandra Daly, Master of Education. Olivia Davidson, Bachelor of Science. Christopher Dimino, Master of Science. Danielle Dinga, Bachelor of Science. Kate Doctor, Master of Education. Brett Doctor, Master of Education. Lori Damian, Bachelor of Science. Natalie Dube, Bachelor of Science. Cassie Dukeshire, Master of Education. Annie Dunham, Master of Education. Tate Eck, Master of Education. Pamela Fall, Master of Education. Paige Feeney, Bachelor of Science. Nicholas Feenstra, Bachelor of Science. Heidi Flitton, Master of Education. Jade Foley, Bachelor of Science. Jody Free, Master of Education. Courtney Galt, Master of Science. Tara Glant, Master of Education. Becky Govin, Master of Education. Deborah Govin, Master of Education. Channy Grosek, Bachelor of Science. Taylor Hagnes, Bachelor of Science. Connor Halverson, Bachelor of Science. Jabril Hassan, Master of Education. Ethan Howe, Bachelor of Science. Catherine Heilman, Bachelor of Science. Michaela Hyper, Bachelor of Science. Tiffany Hillstrom, Master of Education. Ashley Hohalter, Master of Education. Jimmy Howard, Master of Education. Jacob Hutchins, Bachelor of Science. Kiera Jackson, Bachelor of Science. Lindsay Janke, Bachelor of Science. Chelsea Jensen, Master of Education. Piper Jensen, Master of Science. Sarah Jarrett, Bachelor of Science. Erica Johnson, Bachelor of Science. Leah Johnson, Master of Education. Rachel Caston, Master of Education. Kendall Kearney, Bachelor of Science. Heidi Keller, Master of Education. Ashley Kellogg, Master of Education. Ashley Ketterling, Master of Education. Mikey Kilsdawn, Bachelor of Science. Grayson Kitts, Bachelor of Science. Emily Klusman, Bachelor of Science. Emily Knudsen, Bachelor of Science. Taylor Kohler, Bachelor of Science. Brian Crawler, Master of Education. Sheila Krywald, Master of Education. Brian Krywald, Master of Education. Stephanie Kruger, Master of Education. Kelly Quall, Bachelor of Science. Jalen Lardy, Bachelor of Science. Marilyn Larson, Master of Education. Anna Ledebor, Master of Science. Bradley Lidberg, Bachelor of Science. Susan Lissa, Bachelor of Science. Bradley Madden, Master of Science. Lax Magger, Bachelor of Science. Alexis Magstad, Bachelor of Science. Jacob Malik, Bachelor of Science. Sukiri Malula, Bachelor of Science. Elizabeth Martwick, Bachelor of Science. Felisa Mestel, Doctor of Education. Caleb Matilla, Bachelor of Science. J.C. Mayer, Bachelor of Science. Jessica McKay, Bachelor of Science. Alexander McLean, Master of Education. Lana Meissner, Master of Education. Jeff Meissner, Master of Education. Alex Meyer, Bachelor of Science. Cody Mickelson, Master of Education. Darcy Miller, Bachelor of Science. Shannon Miller, Master of Education. Brittany Miraldi, Bachelor of Science. Takashi Mira, Master of Science. Ann Mullen, Bachelor of Science. Tina Nitschke, Master of Education. Riley Nudell, Bachelor of Science. Emily Odland, Bachelor of Science. Tylee Olson, Master of Education. Peyton O'Neill, Bachelor of Science. Christian Opheim, Bachelor of Science. Caitlin Reiner, Bachelor of Science. Aubrey Renfrew, Bachelor of Science. Heather Retzer, Master of Education. Miranda Ripplinger, Master of Science. Karina Rorick, Master of Education. Abby Rogish, Bachelor of Science. Todd Roth, Master of Education. Dana Rudd, Bachelor of Science. Jessica Sandin, Master of Education. Noah Sanders, Bachelor of Science. Bailey Sawyer, Doctor of Philosophy. Anna Schmitz, Bachelor of Science. Allison Shu, Bachelor of Science. Christina Schul, Master of Education. Maggie Schwarzkopf, Bachelor of Science. Logan Sr., Bachelor of Science. Daniel Sikora, Master of Education. Jaden Simonson, Bachelor of Science. Olivia Simonson, Bachelor of Science. Matthew Skoy, Doctor of Philosophy. Chloe Sobolik, Master of Education. Daniel Spellerberg, Master of Education. Shane Steckler, Bachelor of Science. Kyle Stegman, Bachelor of Science. Kristen Steeken, Master of Education. Taylor Steyer, Bachelor of Science. Brandon Storbeck, Master of Education. Vondale Stutling, Master of Education. Jill Taylor, Master of Education. Emma Thiessen, Bachelor of Science. J.J. Thorson, Master of Education. Samantha Thorkeldson, Bachelor of Science. Andrew Thurston, Bachelor of Science. Jenna Treelor, Master of Science. Lane Tucker, Bachelor of Science. Jordan Tulinchik, Bachelor of Science. Brandy Ulland, Master of Education. Haley Usher, Bachelor of Science. Angela Van Bruggen, Master of Education. Eric Van Erp, Bachelor of Science. Harrison Viner, Bachelor of Science. Brianne Welk, Master of Education. Sherla Wells, Master of Education. Kimberly Williams, Master of Education. Kelsey Wirt, Master of Science. Cole Witzig, Bachelor of Science. Shauna Wergler, Master of Education. Sidonia Yankovic, Bachelor of Science. Destiny Young, Bachelor of Science. Suzanne Young, Doctor of Philosophy. Madison Ziegler, Bachelor of Science.